Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jonathan Landsman.
Let's give it up to the organizers of this event, Gigi, and everybody involved. Thank you so much. So I think, obviously everybody understands it. I don't probably have to stand here too much and explain the dangers of GMOs, but it's like all the other topics, I guess, that you're listening to here. We're being lied to. And of course, most of us are, we're good-natured, good-hearted people, and we can't possibly believe, even though we go to events like this, we read books, we get the DVDs, that this stuff is going on. But we're going to get into this a little bit. I only have a short time. There are a lot of speakers, so I'm going to probably talk a little fast. Maybe we can get some Q&A at the end. I'd like that as well. I just don't know how much time I'll have to get everything in today. First, as far as GMOs go, there are 7 foods that are genetically engineered right now. Yes, you heard about tomatoes and potatoes, but that's not really what's going on. Our focus today is going to be on soy and corn. But there's also cotton, canola, sugar beets, alfalfa, and some papaya as well, Hawaiian papaya. So again, like I said to you, today we're going to focus mainly on soy and corn because basically, including myself, we're all eating it. And we're not being told about it. Yes, we go to conferences like this, but you can see there's 330 million people in the United States, give or take a few thousand. And nobody is being told. We tune in on the news, and it's the celebrities and health insurance. Health insurance is not going to protect us from GMOs. We need to go out there and we need to tell everybody about what we learned here at this conference, from what Sheriff Mack said, all the speakers, and especially about GMOs. You'll be surprised. I spoke to a lot of people this morning, children, and I said, what are GMOs? They said, well, it's this thing that's sort of like to make the food look better and last longer. Where'd they get that from? I should have actually started off this presentation by saying, does anybody in the room work for Monsanto? Okay, good, we can talk. They're being lied to. These children are learning this in the schools. You just speak to Charlotte outside at the table here. I'm sure you're all familiar. Everybody familiar with Charlotte out talking about education? I mean, it's mind-blowing. The more you listen to her, just your mind will explode. How dumbed down everybody is. This is coming out of the school systems and being taught to all these kids. The kids I spoke to this morning are 13, 14, 15 years old. They think genetically modified organisms in our food are to make everything last longer and look prettier. Here's some of the false promises, right? Just really quick, a few of them. Feed the world, right? That's good for you and me, right? It's a nice thing to tell everybody. Just go along, stay asleep, and be in favor of GMOs because we're going to feed a lot more people. There are people dying of hunger. They still are, but we're supposed to like that idea. It's not feeding more people, everybody. That's a lie. It's also going to the farmers out there, go along with it. Take the GMO, the GECs, the genetically engineered seeds. You're going to get greater yields on your farms. I do a lot of interviews. I don't know if any of you are familiar with my show every single Sunday. It's absolutely free. It's called the NaturalNews Talk Hour. It's promoted on Natural News. It's also promoted on naturalhealth365.com. Every week we have top experts in medicine, science, and farmers like Eric Herm. Anybody familiar with Eric Herm and his work? Very few. Okay. He has an organic farm, 7,000 acres. Very small. He's a small guy out there in Texas who has moved to organic farming from conventional. There's no greater yields with genetically engineered foods. It's a lie. Okay? They want farmers to believe that so that they will sign a contract, and then Monsanto and the chemical companies like them, they own those farmers. Once they sign that contract, they have to buy the genetically engineered seeds from Monsanto-type corporations, right? Every year, they have to buy those seeds. The farmers are used to paying, conventionally speaking, $30 to $50 for a bag of seed. Genetically engineered seeds Does anybody know how much it costs for one bag of seed, genetically engineered? It's going to be good for the farmer, good for the United States. Does anybody know? $350. Okay, that's what Eric Herm told me. It's all a lie. Once they sign it, they're slaves to these companies. And in fact, if you don't, and you're next to one of these farms that actually harvest these genetically engineered foods, if it blows over to your land and you're not even wanting to be a part of it, Monsanto sends their lawyers over to your land and says, hey, you know what? You're using our licensed, owned property, the genetically engineered seed. And we're going to talk about that as well. The stuff that we own. Even though you didn't sign a contract with us, we're going to take our lawyers, we're going to drag you to court, and you're going to either have to pay a lot of legal fees to defend yourself, or maybe you want to come along with us and just sort of buy the seed. So some of those false promises. Feeding the world? No. Greater yields? No. Less need for pesticides. We'll genetically engineer the seed. You won't have to spray as much. Again, that's more directed towards the farmer. Sounds great. Gets a lot of farmers to shift over. Once they shift over, it's all over. They own you. That's like what I said before. But that's not true. Because as we'll talk about soon with the studies that I'll bring out, it's clear that genetically engineered seeds require more pesticides. This is not just me, this is fact. Don't believe any of the stuff that I'm presenting to you tonight. I urge all of you to look this up. This is all the truth. This is what farmers have told me. They find this out after they sign away their land and the way they've been practicing for generation after generation. They need to spray even more. Another false promise is obviously that with less chemicals, which is not good for the environment, it's going to destroy our water, it's going to destroy the soil. So obviously if you move over to our Monsanto stuff, everything's going to be great for the soil and the water. And obviously, like what I just said, that's simply not true. What do we know about GMOs? Genetically engineered foods, again, let's be clear about what this is. It's cell invasion. Without your permission, a few, and it seems to be the theme of this whole conference, a few elite controlling interests, banking, pharmaceutical, we get it. A few people and companies, entities, are looking to gain control over everything, over everybody else. So clearly we know that genetically engineered foods are causing serious health problems. They are taking foreign DNA, or DNA from another animal or another plant, and they're injecting it into another plant. Let's just stick to corn or soy. How do you suppose that manipulation of the gene from one species to another, how do you suppose that happens? Who said it? Viruses and bacteria. The only way. The nastiest stuff that none of us want in our bodies is flat out admitted. This is how they scientifically force, listen to the language that I'm using because it is deliberate, they force that into a soy or corn. Does that sound natural to you? Not at all. So the health problems associated with this are they're forcing all kinds of strange, mutated bacteria, viruses, and these organisms into our bodies through these seeds, growing this food, and then all of us are ingesting it. So again, go back to the list and be careful for your next meal what you're eating. Anything from corn or soy is extremely important that you watch out for. And all of its derivatives, very important. High fructose corn syrup. Even vitamin C, which we're big, Natural Health 365, we think the importance of vitamin C is just off the chart. Really important. But if it's coming from a corn that is genetically engineered, you have to avoid it. So be careful with all of this, because especially all the corn and soy products that you see on the market, and if you eat animal foods, please be careful, because corn and soy unnatural diets are being given to the animals before they're slaughtered, bioaccumulating into their body tissues year after year. those animals are infested with toxic, genetically engineered food that they're stuffing their face with every day until those animals are slaughtered and brought to the market for everybody to eat. You've got to look for organic. We're going to talk at the end about what to look for as far as shopping guides and really to be able to avoid all this. So don't worry, it's not only about the problem, but it's important for us to shed light on what's going on here. The health problems are very clear. All health problems, you have headaches, brain fog, fatigue, autism in a family, if you know children that are having learning disabilities, dementia, Alzheimer's disease, all of these things. Where does all of this stem from? I mean, I speak to a lot of healthcare practitioners, doctors who are in the trenches trying to help all of us to feel better. Where is this coming from? Allergies, true, it's a symptom. These are conditions. Where is it located, though? First and foremost, our digestive system. And that's why I started off at the beginning by saying to you that this is cell invasion. Cell invasion on a food level that then, without our permission, is invading our bodies. We don't know what all of this is going to be. This is like a big human experiment, genetically engineered food. Injecting all this foreign stuff into food, and then it's being given to the population, and we're all being told a lie. Just relax, it's all safe. We're going to talk about that as well. So clearly, health problems are a big deal. From the gut, allergies, of course, early on, but it can be all the way up to cancer. If your digestive system is destroyed, 70 to 80%, depending on who you talk to, that's where your immune system is. That's what defends us. Sheriff Mack was just talking about how we've got to defend our rights. Well, you know, you could have a great sheriff, all due respect for what you guys just heard. A great sheriff that's fighting for your rights. But if your food has been invaded without your permission, and you're swallowing it all the time, unknowingly, your family, your friends, and your immune system is being destroyed, this is where sickness begins. Our digestive system. Conventional medicine wants us to pay attention to, no, it's not your digestive system. You speak to most conventional doctors. That's simply not true. They'll tell you, it's your heart, it's your kidneys, it's your liver, it's your lungs, it's your brain. Everything that we're hearing here obviously is expanding our minds, right? Our consciousness. We are opening ourselves up and learning so much more about what the world is that we live in. They want us to pay attention. Look at conventional medicine, the way it's set up. Everything is a specialty, right? They want you to look at the world through a very narrow scope. They don't want you to see that your digestive system is extremely important and it should be respected. Genetically engineered foods is not doing that at all. We have to tell our family and our friends, because the money that we spend on the food, if we avoid it, that's the last thing they want to see happen. Companies like Monsanto don't want you to be here. They don't want you to learn this information. Health problems, we know. We know there is a massive increase in more pesticides, more herbicides, in using genetically engineered seeds. All the farmers, the ones that are brave enough to speak out, who I have spoken to, are saying it's ridiculous. We have to spray more and more and more. It is completely not true. And they're very frustrated, they're very upset, and they're really having a hard time making a living, spending a fortune in this death spiral system that they're in, conventional farming with all this genetically engineered seed. We also know that there's a problem with genetically engineered seeds from simply what I've been saying to you, Monsanto, Dow, DuPont. There's not that many companies. We're looking at food monopolies. What do food monopolies represent? We're all experiencing it now, to this day, more and more. Higher food prices. It's not an accident. It's deliberate. The more and more our food is controlled by fewer and fewer companies, and that's exactly where things are going now, with less people informed. We're changing that around with conferences like this, thanks to Gigi's work and all the organizers here. We're changing it because they don't want you to know about all this information. They are looking to control the food supply, and the fewer companies that control the food supply, the higher the prices go. It should be the other way around, right? All this genetic engineering, higher yields, better food, more food coming out of every single acre that farmers have. I mean, we should just have so much food, it's ridiculous. We give it away and it just should be cheap. It's not. It's not happening. We can clearly see it if we open our eyes and we look at what's going on. So, one huge lie is that if you go to the Food and Drug Administration in the United States, you look up genetically engineered food. You know, Jonathan's crazy about this genetically engineered stuff. We got to look this up, and it's got to be horrible. What does the Food and Drug Administration say? No significant difference between genetically engineered and conventional food. Again, just relax, stay asleep. Now, where did they get that from? Well, they investigated it, right? No. They get it from industry. Biotech, right? We know these terms. Monsanto, DuPont, Dow. They get it from the chemical companies. We're going to talk about the kind of information the Food and Drug Administration is getting. They just took the party line. There's no difference, FDA. Relax. No big deal. Everything's safe. They bought it. They put it into their policy, and it's been there for years and years. They don't look at it anymore. We have to push them. We've got to write our policymakers, lawmakers. We got to make a noise about this. And we're going to talk about how there is clearly proof that they are shaking in their boots. The time is coming. Genetically engineered foods, there's 60 countries that outlaw it. The United States, it's okay. Okay? Genetically engineered food, prove it that people are dying, and we'll take it off the market. 60 plus countries all through Europe, everywhere throughout the world. Prove it to me that it's safe before I let you feed it to my people. That's the way it should be, right? Our government stands in front of us, Obama, everybody, it doesn't matter. Obama, I'm not Democrat, I'm not Republican. Bush, Clinton, it doesn't matter. All of them, they're just puppets, they're acting the same way. We care about you people, we want everybody to have health insurance, we want everybody to be healthy, a long, happy, healthy, free life, blah, 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 and they do nothing about genetically engineered foods. Obama's allowed it, free reign, no problem. This all started early back with Bush. They all started, Bush Sr., they all started this and allowed this to come onto the market. None of those politicians have cared to protect us from this with no safety standards at all. So clearly, we have no significant difference, the FDA says. But I have a question for all of you. If there's no difference, how does the Environmental Protection Agency, the United States Patent Office, issue patent after patent to Monsanto for their significantly different technology in creating these seeds? They have clearly presented evidence that shows that these seeds are really different, and they get to own them. That's a dangerous thing. Luke Rudowski's here. He's interviewed Henry Kissinger a few times. I believe it was Henry Kissinger that had a lovely quote about how, like, you don't need guns or anything. You know, if you just control the food supply, you can control an entire country. This is serious stuff. Okay, I'm sure every speaker is going to tell you, you know, this is serious stuff. But this is serious stuff. First of all, I should have started saying my presentation is the most important. Don't listen to anyone. No, listen to everybody. The point is that owning the food is really crazy. It goes against every bit of common sense that we all have. There should be full transparency. We should know what's in our food, how it's created, and make decisions, our own right, to be able to pick and choose what we want to eat. Okay, moving along. I promise it won't be long. Let me keep going here. This is important stuff. So Norway took food out of Iowa, the crops, corn, soy, this kind of stuff, out of Iowa, and recently a Norwegian study clearly showed that there is a difference. Conventional crops, genetically engineered crops, and they actually noticed that, you know, the glyphosate, Monsanto's Roundup, the herbicide, It's an extremely popular herbicide for those who don't know this. Monsanto's making a fortune on this. Nearly half, I believe, their revenue, of billions and billions of dollars, is from not only the herbicide, but also now selling the genetically engineered food to all of these farmers. They're making serious money off of all this stuff. That the Norway study actually showed that conventional food is okay. The genetically engineered seeds, a little bit more toxic. And what they noticed was the genetically engineered seed, as a third group, that gets sprayed more and more with the pesticides, guess what happens to that food that everybody's eating, including those animals out there, they have no idea what's happening to them. It soaks up more concentration of that toxic poison, gets sucked into the seed because of its genetic engineering. The direct opposite of what industry is trying to sell to every farmer. That is proven in science. I've read the science. It's unbelievably difficult to read, but you can see they've done a lot of work on studying exactly what's in the food. So when someone says to you, oh, Jonathan, there's no proof. It's not true. There's proof. Line number 2, GMOs are safe, right? Monsanto gives all this information to the Food and Drug Administration. Just relax, let us do our thing, we're going to help the world. It's not true. Monsanto studies mice, animals, no human studies at all on this. Everybody's eating it, right? Mice were studied for 90 days. The most, some way less. Okay? That's all they do. Except there's one catch, there's one problem to this. If you go to Professor Cirolini, anybody know Professor Cirolini in France? One person. We got to talk about this. This is extremely important. There is, good, 3 people, sorry. 2 other people that had their hand low. Okay, Professor Cirolini in France, very famous study now. It's been out on Natural News quite a bit. This report's been out for over a year now. He did extensive studies on genetically modified foods and genetically modified foods that were sprayed with the Roundup, the herbicide, exactly the same amount of mice, exactly the same concentrations. He didn't jack it up to try to make Monsanto look terrible. Except there's one catch. Cirolini did this from first 3 months. Monsanto's right. In the 4th month, things started to kick in. Cirolini's study went 2 years. When I tell this story now, I still get chills. I can't believe nobody else in all their intelligence, PhDs in charge of all this food safety, would ask, do you have a study maybe a little bit more than 3 months? Not one. Cirolini's the only one, 2-year study. And if you look at the pictures on Natural News, you punch up Professor Cirolini, you will see the studies that were done on genetically engineered foods and what happened to these mice. It's horrific. Sterility, stillbirths, reproductive problems, and massive tumors. From 9 months to 2 years out, these mice look like they're busting out, all eating the same food that's being fed to all the animals here in the United States and creating all of this food. It's a crime against humanity, clearly. And now to top it all off, just in the last couple months, we have the Grocery Manufacturers Association. Anybody know this wonderful organization? They're shoveling all the food to all of us, and of course, they will tell you if you look up their website, they're very interested in bringing the best food to everybody, and they basically represent ConAgra, all the big food pushers out there that are making a fortune of money off of all the food that we all buy. The Grocery Manufacturers Association now has a great idea through their lawyers, and I read the letter, it's a 2-page thing, it's brilliant. They're sending to the lawyers of the Food and Drug Administration, they would like to have this thing just resolved. So we can just settle this thing once and for all. All the food in all those supermarkets all throughout the United States, if they have genetically engineered foods in there, let's just call it natural. That's the truth. We see the foods out there now. Anything that you see that's natural and not stamped with USDA organic seal or non-GMO verified project, those labels, watch out. So many of those food companies that look natural and mom and pop and animals and happy children bouncing around on the label and everything says natural, genetically engineered foods are in there. They know it. These grocery stores, Whole Foods, you're hearing it now, they're making a move years from now, who knows what'll happen for real. But they certainly made a declaration. They gotta get all the genetically engineered food off their shelves. Whole Foods, I might be off by a little bit, but they're doing about $12 to $14 billion a year. You don't move food like that off the shelves tomorrow. If they did that, they'd be out of business. All those box stores would shut down in very fast order. So these foods are filled with genetically engineered foods. Everybody's eating it, all the natural stuff. They don't want to be in trouble. Right now, the Grocery Manufacturers Association has about 65 lawsuits against them. They're under attack. So their solution is to get the FDA just to say, genetically engineered foods in the product, the ingredients, it's natural, it's all good. Monsanto wants to back, and has backed, by the tune of millions of dollars, blocking genetically modified organism labeling laws. Now, I'm sure you've heard this. In California, Washington, they were defeated. The reason why I'm finishing up this presentation on a positive note is because it really is changing. In the last few years, this is great turnout, by the way. Thank you all for coming out. We need more of this, and the word is getting out. On radio shows like Alex Jones's radio show, I'm sure a lot of you know Infowars.com, NaturalNews.com, NaturalHealth365.com, all of the websites out there that are getting this information out, that genetically modified organisms are dangerous, and that we have a right to it. Wherever you stand, it's not such a big deal, be quiet, Jonathan. At least we all should agree that we have a right to know what we're buying and what's in it. It's there, it's a fundamental right. So this labeling law push is happening. California was pushed back, Washington was pushed back. California's Prop 37, that was November 2012, $44 million. Monsanto, DuPont, companies like this, they spent $44 million to defeat that bill. And their claim, the big claim was just, if this passes, it'll cost consumers like you a few $100s a year more if we have to label the food. Only a few $100s more a year, so they decided to spend $44 million to defeat that bill. Does that make sense to you guys? $22 million those same corporations spent against $7 million for Dr. Bronner's, Nutiva, Natural News donated some money. Companies and individuals like you, they raised about $7 million in Washington against $22 million to defeat Initiative 522. Same idea in Washington State. They just lost it, and on record, millions of votes were not counted to defeat, to get GMOs labeled on the food. So they spent, there alone in those two states, $60+ million. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to stop this. This is the big awakening. Yep. The big kicker, and I wasn't sure about this at the beginning, but clearly now this is it. We have to label the food. Because once it gets labeled, nobody's going to buy it. Cat's out of the bag. So to wrap it up, to avoid genetically engineered foods, you can visit Institute for Responsible Technology. I've spent recently a lot of time with Jeffrey Smith. He is definitely the premier researcher on this topic. We've got videos that'll come out on NaturalHealth365.com. You can go to the Institute for Responsible Technology. There's a non-GMO shopper's guide. It's free download. Just go on that site, get that guide, educate yourself. Go on to NaturalHealth365.com if you like. You can sign up for our newsletter. It's free. My show every Sunday is broadcasted all day, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. It's free. We have GMOs we talk about, all kinds of natural health issues. You can check all that out as well. And thank you all very much for coming out.